So I think it's about time that we crack open some of these beers, but like I said, I'm just going to start casually pouring here and get a little sample. I will say for the tasting that this beer, I've drank it a lot in the past couple weeks in different environments, and it's really best if you don't drink it ice cold. So if you just took it out of the fridge or you had it on ice, you might want to let it warm up to about 45, maybe even 50 degrees, because it really opens up and it's a lot better. With that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and crack mine open. Well, bam. There we go.
Some intense faces.
There we go. Good head.
Right. All right, just to scroll through here, though, as we get to taste the beer and get to know this, I want to kind of go through the various people here and share a little bit about yourselves. So, first of all, I guess we should start with Adam. Adam, you want to introduce yourself to the crew here?
Hello. Hello, Sixpoint. Hello, world. My name is Adam Zuniga. I just returned from California to New York. I write a blog called Beer in the City. It's all about discovering craft beer in New York City. Likewise, setting up competition between East Coast and West. Let's face it, there's competition. So, but anyways, happy to be here. Happy to meet you all. Some of you I certainly recognize, like you, Beer Wench. I love your photos, but it's good to meet all of you.
Wait. When you say East Coast versus West, what happened to the Midwest? Is that just flyover territory, or?
Oh, hardly. There's a lot of great beer in the Midwest, but I guess I would say probably more pride. It's like you got to side with one coast or the other, unfortunately. And I think there's, the constant question between New York and LA, and that's where I was in Los Angeles, and now I'm back to New York because it's home for better or worse. So just kind of establishing an identity between the two beer-wise is the goal.
Right on. And okay, so what about you, Ashley? What's your short biography here?
Me?
Yes, you. It's your turn.
I'm actually from New York, so I have the East Coast, West Coast too. I don't know. I started blogging about beer almost 6 years ago, and I don't know. I write for the Brewers Association now. I write for Whole Foods on a monthly basis. I still run my own blog, but rarely ever. And I work for a brewery now in California. I've been with Bison Brewing for about 3 years. I do operations, so my daily day-to-day grind is not as exciting as most people would want it to be. I actually do not do marketing. I do operations. I manage production and inventory. I manage 22 distributors in 14 different states, and I keep my boss in line. I'm his right hand, so everything he doesn't do for the company, I do. Most of the accounting and invoicing, I'm accounts payable, I'm accounts receiving. So,
wow.
Yeah.
You're like the CFO, the operations officer, the comptroller, and the sales manager or the wholesaler manager, all rolled into one.
Everything comes through me. Yeah, and it's pretty cool because we're a contract brewery. So I actually literally do manage the production schedule. I manage MicroStar. I know the ins and outs of running a brewery from this perspective as opposed to like having our own brick and mortar. We do have a very hands-on contract model as well. So my brewmaster is always up there. He just brought barrels up there this week. Whenever we do honey basil, he brings a fresh batch of basil that's essentially picked the day of the brew. So We also do smaller stuff. We used to have a brew pub in Berkeley, so we do have a strong brand presence in the area, but the city kicked us out in 2008, so contracting was out of desperation more than anything, but it's also been a great way for us to expand. We're organic, so we have a certain niche that doesn't necessarily work everywhere, and so we're very metro-centered, so we like going into states, but we're only usually in the cities, as opposed to the country, because people don't really get into the organic stuff there yet. But.
Well, thanks. And Chris, can you tell, Chris Stelz, that is, I've known you now for about almost 3 years now.
Yeah.
Can you share your back? I mean, you get around quite a bit. I mean, all these people who are on here are either entrenched in the beer scene, whether on the the professional side or the amateur side, but I've come across or crossed paths with them in interesting ways. So, Chris, do you want to share with us your story?
Sure. I run BeerGeekNation.com. We do video reviews. We don't focus so much on the writing aspect. A lot of homebrewing stuff, video reviews, stuff like that. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I do it. It's part-time. That's not my full-time job. It's just a hobby I picked up, I don't know, maybe I guess about 10 years ago, and kind of wanted something to do a little bit different with it, and that's kind of how Beer Geek Nation got started. And so far, we're the biggest one on YouTube as far as beer reviews and everything, so we'll see where it goes in the next couple years. So,
how many reviews are you up to right now?
Just did it's over 500 at this point.
Damn.
We have.
It's impressive.
Yeah.
So, Jan, I mean, I clearly know you very well, but you want to just share people your brief history about how you got into beer and American craft beer?
Sure. Where am I? Oh, there. Can you hear me? Okay, good.
Yeah, we can hear you great.
All right. I'm Jan Matysiak. I'm the Sixpoint brewmaster, and I got into beer. Well, as a German, it's quite a natural thing. You are just into beer by birth. So I got introduced to it at a very early age. But my real passion for beer started only when I got into it professionally. I got my degree in brewing science from the University of Weinstefan. Worked in several breweries, brew pubs in Germany, and eventually in 2008 I came to the United States, first to work for breweries in Texas, in Austin to be specific, and since 2011 I serve as brewmaster for Sixpoint, and hey, it has been a pretty good time, and I think we made some great beer. We continue to do so, and it's definitely quite unusual path for a German to be that engaged in in using abundant amounts of hops and whatnot, and brewing like double IPAs and all these things. But it's awesome, and yeah, it's great.
Cool, thanks. Jim, I think of anyone on this entire tasting panel, I've known Jim the longest. I think I've known you for almost 10 years now. So, Jim, can you share with everyone your story?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you. I can.
Okay, great. So, yeah, I feel the reason I'm here, I mean, I'm a manager and beer buyer at the Beer Mongers, which is a beer bar and bottle shop in Portland, Oregon, but I think I'm here because I was a very early supporter and someone who was really enthusiastic about Sixpoint in the early days of your guys' company. Big fan as well, obviously.
Yeah, I think actually we had a dispute online that was settled over a beer.
I think I reviewed your Diesel on Beer Advocate back in, say, 2004, 2005, something like that, and yeah, then you started to give me some bottled stuff, and then I started to help you bottle down at the old factory in Brooklyn there, and we just became friends. So yep. There we go. Here I am. I'm so happy to be here today.
So of this global, and that's from Portland, Oregon. So just to take you through this, we had Brooklyn, Oakland, California, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania area. Jan's out in the Wilkes-Barre, Scranton area. Jim's in Portland. And now we're going to hear from Brazil, which is very exciting. So Katya, can you share with us your story?
Yes. Well, I think I'm the only one outside of the U.S. or not?
That was able to make it for this, yes. We needed to find people
Thank you very much.
Okay, no problem. So I mean, you have quite a popular beer blog in Brazil. Do you want to share the story about that with everyone?
Yeah, actually, nowadays I teach about beer. I have been working in 2 different beers, one in Germany, actually, at Paulana. I worked for a year, and then in Brazil, 5 years. And since 2010, we did a beer sommelier course in Brazil. So I have been teaching for 3 years, and now we have really a beer school called Instituto da Cerveja. And we are teaching not only beer sommelier courses, but also different ones. And I'm also, as I did the beer sommelier course and brewmaster course, I'm also working a little bit in developing new beer recipes or helping some breweries in technology process, but mostly in this teaching area and also consulting somehow.
Right on. A beer consultant, an international beer consultant.
Yeah, not yet
That's
international, national.
Well, Germany, Brazil, I mean, that's pretty international.
Oh, yeah, okay. Okay.
So that brings us to Norman. I think I've known you probably second longest of anyone on here.
Yeah, I think I met you...
The Beer Advocate Beer Festival.
Yeah, I think it's like 2006, 2007 maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm Norman Miller. I write the Beer Nut column that's syndicated to the Gatehouse newspapers. My column is basically a way to try to almost demystify the growing liquor store shelves for the average newspaper reader who's interested in getting beer, but might be intimidated by seeing 75 to 100 IPAs on the shelf at the time. I also write a blog with the same name, The Beer Nut. And I'm writing my second book right now about the history of beer in Boston. And I take part in the Seacoast Beverage Lab podcast every Monday.
Which I believe I was on one of those, right?
Yes, you're one of our first out of New England guests when we're trying to expand just beyond just New England brewers.
Nice. All right, and that brings us to Steph. And what do you do? Tell us about your happenings besides creating a lot of feedback on the Google Meet.
I just like to cause trouble for the most part. Can everybody hear me? I can't.
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay. I run a beer blog called The Girl and Her Beer. I'm out of Chicago, Illinois, by way of Green Bay, Wisconsin. Go Pack. I haven't had as much time to devote to it lately. I got a new job, and it takes up a lot more time than I had previously in my last job. But I like to cook with beer. I like to brew beer. I like to drink beer, and I less frequently wrote about beer. I have to say, considering all the good beer that does come through Chicago, I peddle Sixpoint on so many people because honestly, it's really good. I'm not as accomplished as all of you. I'm sorry. I just like to drink it a lot more than I like to write about it.
I think everyone here, though, in their own way, has a very unique contribution. What they're doing to the overall community, and that's really what's important. I mean, Jim, like for instance, Jim in Portland. He doesn't have unless I'm mistaken, like Jim, you don't have a beer blog. I mean, for a while you were writing on the Pizza Slice blog with Serious Eats, but like you're more into the scene than just about anyone I know. Like if there's a new beer coming onto the scene, like he knows about it. Or last time, actually, Jan met Jim in person when we were visiting out in Portland a while back, and just as a little brief aside here, there's a couple new little breweries that had popped up in the Oregon area that Jim had tipped us onto, and they hadn't even really been producing significant volumes at the time, but some of the beer was phenomenal. So it's really cool to see all the different people that are here and into the scene. We're still waiting for Ale Sharpton, and I forwarded the contact info to Chris and Aaron, but they're Chris Starbank and Aaron Ackroth. But we're just going to go ahead and get started here. So now that everyone knows each other and we're all friends. So everyone has I take it everyone got their fresh sample of the beer, right? No one got left behind. So even Katya, you got yours in Brazil?
Yes, I did.
That's awesome.
Yesterday,
Good.
yeah.
We had to like do it. We had to airlift that and drop it from. Like international shipping of beer. I sent some beer to. Is this being recorded? I should probably not talk about this then. There's actually like pretty strict laws out there about shipping beers in the mail. In various countries, you're supposed to report and claim for customs and then pay duties and all this stuff. But I don't think most people realize there's all these legal entanglements. So we just ship beer. Interesting. I don't want to get too off topic here, but the other night, our creative director had posted something on Instagram about beer mail, and just kind of solicited comments from people. I think some people here would. This isn't shocking, but to me, like, do you realize how big this massive underground economy is about beer that's being shipped in the mail every single day? Like, there are probably tens of thousands of packages that are crisscrossing in the United States with beers in them. And because we're not that big of a brewery, but I always notice there's like everyone's drinking resin in California or Arizona or Washington or Colorado, and I'm wondering to myself, did they put this in their suitcase and fly home, or did someone ship them in the mail? So this is happening all over the place, and now it's happening internationally too, and for tastings like this. So let's go ahead though and get some. Oh, it looks like someone activated their speakers. Everyone getting that feedback now? Oh, okay. So whoever did that rectified it. So this global warmer, let me just me and Jano give a little bit of a brief description of the genesis of this beer. So one of the things that you might want to hear about, like, as you taste this beer, and those of you who have enjoyed Sixpoint beers in the past realize that our beers aren't necessarily brewed to style guidelines, and furthermore, what actually happens is you have these situations where someone sees the beer and they see the name of it, but without the description on it, they have no idea really what they're getting into. So right now, a lot of people have purchased this beer because it was just released into the market essentially like about a week ago or so in most markets, and they're expecting the typical winter warmer style beer. So they're expecting a beer that's kind of syrupy and tastes kind of like gingerbread, so to speak. We had Jan and I can pretty much say, like, we had absolutely no intention of having like a fruitcake type beer. As a matter of fact, this was sort of a very hardcore, purist approach to just making a kick-ass winter style beer, right? With just basically using the four basic ingredients of beer. But what's really interesting is some people are saying to us that they can taste the spice. They're like, I can taste the winter spices, is what I hear in comments. But what they really are, I think what they mean to say is, I can taste the spice of the hops, or I can taste the spice of the yeast. So like these four basic elements of beer, the traditional ones I should say, they produce the same organic compounds that you could do by adding different spices. So with that in mind, I want to turn to our resident hophead, Adam, and the West Coast resident hophead here. And what are your first impressions of this beer, not ever knowing what it was or getting a real style description? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, when I first cracked it open, first thought was double IPA, honestly. And the great thing about it is it's not winter seasonal specific. It's something I could drink year-round, and that I certainly appreciate. But I'm curious as to what the hop profile is compared to your Bengali Tiger.
Good question. This one actually uses hops that are very related to the Bengali tiger hops in terms of their genetics, but they're not the same strains. So this one has Citra and Simcoe hops in it, whereas what's interesting is, like, if you take Cascade is like the sort of the Abraham of hops, if you know what I mean, like in Western theology. So like every single modern hop just about traces its heritage at some point in time back to the Cascade hop. So even Centennial, for example, is basically just a slightly supercharged Cascade. And now what's really happened though is you have these ultra derivatives like that have come out recently, like Citra and Simcoe, which are even more robust, more aroma, more dankness, more intense grapefruit flavors. And folks are going wild for it. But what's even more interesting to me is there's even crazier stuff in the pipeline. So I've been tasting, and we've been working with hop strains that haven't even been released yet to commercial brewers, but they're being developed. So they're in the hybridization program, and they are crazy. Like the aromas and the flavors that are coming off of these hops now are. I almost wonder if they're like from the planet Krypton, because they're so intense.
Yeah.
Just get ready for some crazy stuff to hit the scene in the next 5 years, basically.
Cool. I get like a heavy kind of earthy, grassy element from this beer. It feels like it's heavy on the bittering hops, and I certainly enjoy that. I don't know if the Sierra Nevada celebration was at all an inspiration, but I mean, this definitely kind of joins that category of seasonal, non-seasonal favorites for me.
Cool. Well, what I'm going to do is let Jan comment on that, and him provide some insight, but also invite Ashley to provide her comments on her impressions of this beer too.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, it certainly has a fair amount of bittering hops to it, but we always try to, when we engineer, well, I say engineering, but there's more to it than just punching in numbers and figuring out calculations. When we try to create our beers, we always try to balance everything. And balance doesn't mean like balance like a bock beer or so. Like balance just means in the balance of its own realms. So for this kind of beer, which we dubbed in the end an Imperial Red, it has a certain amount of bittering to it, but it's pleasant. It's not astringent. It's not harsh. It is just there. It kind of accompanies the malty backbone, and together with all these flavors and aromas that come together really well from the hops and the malt. And as Shane pointed out already, just using basically those four elements, no fancy spices, no nothing, just like the pure basic beer ingredients, and from those being able to create something that people think would not be possible without using said ingredients like spices and whatnot, and so even to the point that people think we actually used them. So, and I think that is actually almost a compliment, because it means that it is possible to achieve all these dimensions and layers of flavors and aromas with just hops and malt and whatnot.
Nice. So when you first tried it, Ashley, what were your thoughts in terms of, I don't know if you got a product description or you knew what you were getting into, but when you first took a few sips, what were you thinking in terms of flavor?
Actually, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mute myself when I'm not talking just because I don't want to make any noise. I played a game, well, I didn't look up the tasting notes, where canned beers, you don't see it. And so oftentimes, especially with wine and other beverages, you taste with your eyes first, so you know what it is. And so I tasted it before knowing what it was, and so it's kind of like the guessing game, like, what is this, I do think it's getting more complex as it's opening up in the glass. That's the one drawback of cans. I love cans to death. I'm a very outdoorsy person, very active in California, and I ride my bike everywhere, and cans are like the perfect thing to take with you. But you got to pour it in the glass in order to get that real bright citrus hop aroma. Otherwise, you're not going to really get all those flavors. Because when I first tasted it out of the can, it was really bitter. And then when I poured it into the glass, the bitterness kind of melted away because I was able to get more of the citrus aroma from the hop blend. And I do think, yeah, it is very much a red ale. I would say it's a little bit East Coast style. Out here, we tend to have really, really light pale malts. We don't use very many specialty malts in our IPAs. But as the weather does get colder, you want less refreshing styles. And you want something that's a little bit more rich with more malt flavor. And so I really like it. I think it's awesome.
You pretty astute observations, because I know as Jan and I formulated this recipe, there is quite a variety of crystal malts in there, and there's even just a little bit, if I remember correctly, isn't there just a little bit of chocolate malt too?
Yep, correct.
Like 20 pounds or something really
yes.
Negligible on a large scale. On a homebrew scale, that would be over the top, obviously. But
you can taste the smoothness from those malts, though. That kind of takes away the bite from the alcohol, I think, by having those specialty malts. The one thing I wanted to say is that you do have a signature flavor that carries through a lot of your hop-focused or your hop-centric products. Mm-hmm. It does have notes of resin in it, but not the alcoholic burn because it's not as strong. But you can taste the yeast, and I would say you do use the same yeast, house yeast, throughout your beers, and that's something that I find in Lagunitas and Stone is very characteristic. You know a brand's beer because of their house yeast.
Sure. Yeah, and I also feel like it's, they're like brothers of another mother. You know what I mean? Like, or whatever, birds of a feather, or dogs from the same litter, or whatever. It's like when you have a portfolio of beers, sometimes it's fun to understand how they're all interrelated to one another. So, Chris, you've drank quite a few of our beers. What do you think of this beer? What are your comments?
Yeah,
this guy's very articulate, so let's hear his.
Oh, don't set that up.
But here we go. Here comes some poetry.
Yeah, right. I mean, I figured it was it's gonna sound bad, but a typical winter warmer. I didn't know. When I poured it in the glass, I'm like, whoa, okay, it is a Sixpoint beer. So I kind of thought, you guys were gonna do something different with it. And then I realized how hoppy it was. Smelling it, I got big citrus off this thing. I'm like, wow, this is definitely a different take. Then when I got into it, you definitely start to get that spiciness. That's almost like a noble hop type of spiciness in there. I was thinking, well, did they use rye in it to kind of bring out more spiciness as far as what malt bill went into it, or wheat to give it more body? But I think it's kind of it's definitely, if you think of it in a different take on a winter warmer, it works. It's really, really solid stuff. It's good stuff.
Right on. So that brings us over to Jim. Now, I just want to preface this, is that someone mentioned like inspirations for this beer, and part of the, someone mentioned like maybe Sierra Nevada Celebration, right? But Jan, when you and I sat down and we formulated this beer, we didn't really even bring that beer up, like I think in a conversation. But
we did not. But I mean, who knows? Maybe subconscious there was something in our minds that we were after. But I don't think we talked specifically about any kind of beers we wanted to take certain elements out of.
Sure.
But I mean, we all tried our fair share of a lot of beers, so I'm sure there may be like certain preferences that directed or guided us towards this or that direction in the process.
Sure, and that brings up an interesting point. Like, I always feel like it's very important to drink a lot of beer, and the reason why is because very important, right? But as a what I mean is, as a brewer, and we encourage our brewers too, like, to drink a lot of beer, and by that I mean a wide variety of beers, and not just like gallons of a single beer. But the reason why is that the more beers and the more flavors you expose yourself to, the more expansive your palate and your mind becomes. You know, it's like the more stimulation you get from your environment, like when you walk into a recipe formulation process, you'll have a completely different perspective on things. And so as you taste like all these great, amazing low gravity beers, sour beers, high gravity beers, Belgian, German, New Zealand, Brazilian beers, whatever, you get a really strong feel of what's happening out there and the potential. And you know, if you're only drinking beers because sometimes you know the type. Some people are like they only drink West Coast IPAs, right? Well, the problem is that you're only going to when you walk into like a formulation stage, that's your universe. You know what I mean? You want your universe to be expansive, and for there to be tons of possibilities. That's just my perspective. But Jim, this beer, just so a side note, this beer is based upon, or one of the pillars of this beer, is based upon a beer that I think Jim was the only person on here who's ever tried it. But one of the inspirations for this beer is a beer that we used to make called the Rebel Lion, also known as.
That's so funny. I could have called that, man. It evoked such a nostalgia to me when I opened up, and I didn't want to say that because it's way fresher and the hops are way more pronounced. It's got way more fruit to it. But I did think about that partially because of what Ashley said about your yeast. But man, yeah, it brought Rebel Lion to my mind too.
Yeah, the only thing that we couldn't do with the Rebel Lion to resurrect it is the Rebel Lion was a special beer that we made where I won a. This is a great story. So I won a bottle of 1974 Guinness at an auction. I was at an auction where I won it. It was a charity auction, and someone was auctioning off various different things. And this dude's like, and it was in the UK, and he was like, and here we have a bottle of 1974 Arthur Guinness Stout, right, bottle condition. And I was like, oh shit, I gotta get that, right? And I ended up getting it for like only about $25 at this auction. But I was like, I can't just drink this thing. So I took it home, decanted 90% of the beer off of it, and then I basically did like a single cell propagation off the yeast. There was actually just a few cells in there that were still viable, right? So we got this yeast strain from a bottle of beer that was basically over 30 years old that was still alive. There were some live yeast cells in there. Wow. Cultured that up and then made this Imperial Red back in 2005 at Sixpoint. And it was like what I call the head melter. Like people, it was like that final scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark where like the guy's face just like melts down. And no, people were digging it. But the thing is that yeast, like we can't get that yeast back. I have to figure out a way that I don't have that on slant anywhere. I don't know how I'm ever gonna. If I could find a bottle of that Rebel Lion, we could reculture it up. That'd be an interesting.
All of my Rebel Lion, man.
Yeah, I gotta find. Maybe Jan and I can try to figure out how to make that happen.
Yeah,
maybe.
So, Jim, did you want to? Jim is, by the way, when Jim used to write these reviews on Beer Advocate, some of them were just like dissertations about beer. So I'm really interested to hear like his. I'd like to hear some of his insights, so to speak. Like really go to the nitty gritty. And the best thing about Jim is he never bullshits me, man. When we make beers that he doesn't like, he'll just tell me straight up. He'll be like, you know what, I didn't like this beer. And no pressure here, but what's the real insight on this beer, man?
Well, I will get right at that. A lot of people have been saying citrusy. I agree with Adam, the first guy. I think my initial impression was double IPA. But I'm not getting citrus. I'm getting peach, apricot. I'm getting just a more fruit-forward thing to it. If I had to close my eyes and think there was an adjunct in it, I wouldn't say spice, like celebration. I'd say apricot puree in there, something of that nature. And I think that is great. It definitely defies what I expect from a winter warmer. It's a lot brighter. It's actually a good strong summer beer, I would say. I would drink this in warm weather, I think. I'm really enjoying the heck out of it. It's my second can. I would say that my ability to verbalize my opinion is because, I would say interrupted slightly by the enjoyment and the effects of the beer. But I would drink it, and I'm going to finish all 4 of these today at some point.
Nice. Well, that's a good sign.
Yeah.
So that brings us to Katya. I mean, you probably have the most unique perspective because I'd imagine that your beer selection in Sao Paulo is just clearly way different than the typical beer selection that we have here. So where would this wouldn't even really fit into the typical beers down there, right? Like, how would you? Oh, and here's the other thing. Katya right now is going into the height of summer, whereas the rest of us here are going into the dead of winter. So the winter warmer thing doesn't really work for her. What is it? Probably 90 degrees down there. But so what do you think though, like in terms of your perspective on this beer, the flavor profile, stuff like that?
I was going to say exactly what you said now. Today was a very hot day for us. We had, well, we're saying Celsius, so I'm not sure about Fahrenheit, but there was 30 degrees Celsius today, so it's really hot. Yeah. And the beer was also perfectly drinkable and refreshing. So it's not only a winter warmer, I would say. That's my first point. So this about the very strong hoppiness and flavor and aroma and bitterness. Nowadays we have really a wave of bitter beers in Brazil. So everybody would say about everybody, but I mean people that inserted in this special beers world, let's say like that. And I really like the beer. The aroma is refreshing with the citrusy notes, and I got a little bit of spiciness too, but the citrusy is more intense. Then in flavor, I really like it's well balanced. I mean, the maltiness is also very well inserted, and we have body, and we have, of course, the feeling of the alcohol, but it's very well balanced. So I could drink this beer also with the temperature we have right now. So I really liked it.
Right on. So Norm, you're basically hailing from probably the coldest part of anyone on here. You're probably freezing your ass off the most.
Yeah, I'm sitting here in shorts right now, but yeah.
Right. Right.
No, it was funny when I first took a sip of this beer. The first thing I thought of was, wow, this is like really light on the palate for the alcohol it is. I really got a lot of hop that smell, but it really reminded me more of a summer, more for a summer beer I drink year round basically. I'm a big seasonal drinker. Like during the summer, I drink tons of pilsners and wheat. During the fall, Oktoberfest. During the winter, I drink a bunch of stouts. And this is more of a beer that I think I drink year round. The thing I like about it is that obviously you get a lot of the hop aroma when you first take a sniff, but when you take your first sip, it really is a lot of balance there, and the malt really does a really good job and ends with a nice little bitter kick at the end.
All right, so that brings us to my fellow Wisconsinite, Steph. I didn't know you were from Green Bay.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, way up there, yeah.
By the way, it's time for me to refresh.
Me too.
I know I'm already halfway through my second one. So
yeah, I'm going to grab another.
I mean, I think that I am falling behind then.
You guys mind if I grab one real quick before I speak my piece?
Yeah, I mean, you have to have a fresh beer.
I suppose.
I see Adam just topped off, too. There you go.
All right.
I definitely see myself sitting there drinking a full 4-pack in one night. It just goes down really easy.
It's a good sign. The thing is that I almost feel that if it were the 4-pack of the 16-ounce cans, it wouldn't really be the right fit for me. But there's something about the 12-ounce sleek that I like for this beer. I think it worked out quite well.
Plus the can's cute.
Well, it has a devastating look to it, but I think that, it was funny. I was actually in Oregon, a couple months ago, and I tried to link up with Jim, but I went for a hike.
I don't think you really tried, man.
I just blew you off, man.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
It's cool, though. It's cool. We're still friends, man.
Okay, good. No, but I had this thing where I went out for a hike, and I went hiking in the. Oh, by the way, most of the lighting in my house is ambient. So I live in this. It's just like a. It was a ironworks factory in Brooklyn. That's my dog. And it's just lit by these skylights from above, and there's really like no real infrastructure in there. So as the sun goes down, I'm gonna get darker and darker and darker. So it's gonna be pretty interesting. So the only ambient light is just gonna be the. We can use the light from Aaron's laptop. There you go. Thanks. So I went hiking though, right? And then it was like a pretty long hike. It's about 12, 13 mile round trip and quite a bit of elevation climb. And at the end of this hike, I was just completely jonesing for an IPA. Like I had a weird, and I've craved IPA before, but not like this. This was more of a like dehydration plus craving hop juice. And I was just like, oh man, I wish I had a cold resin, because I was thinking like it's concentrated hop juice in a can, you know, and then it's way more efficient than if you had to carry or lug around a whole 6-pack with you. You have a nice light, and by light I mean, you know, less mass or less weight. Can whoa it is the dangling jammer. We got some comical people. Aaron and Chris hanging out. Chinook, come here. Oh, so here's my dog, Chinook. Chinook, come on. Now, his name is Chinook, named after one of my favorite hop strains. Come here, Chinook. Let's say hi to Chinook. Chinook? Chinook. Dude.
Oh, cute.
Global warmer, bro. The global warmer. Global warmer. Well, he just gave me a French kiss. And Barley decided to come in too. Barley, what are you doing? So, whoa! So the dogs have joined the global tasting. So now that Steph, you got your, guys, you gotta get out of here. So Steph, you got yourself a fresh pour, right?
Yep, I did.
So let's hear your feedback.
You know, I received Global Warmer, and I recently judged a homebrew contest, and it was a winter warmer contest. And after that, there were, you know, 1 or 2 that really stood out. But through the whole thing, I never have to taste clove again in my life. I think my palate is honestly ruined for clove after that. So I was a little bit worried. You guys go for intense flavor, and that's the one thing I really like about everything that you guys have done, is everything is very intense. You know, whether it be the hops, or there's just always one thing that stands out. So I'm sitting here worrying that I'm going to have to drink the clove beer again. As soon as I poured it, I was extremely happy to see that, you know, I could smell the hops right away, and I could see that it wasn't a deep brown color. First sip, a lot of people have said this. I know Ashley mentioned it. She kind of notices just kind of a flavor profile that you really see through all your beers. And the first thing I thought of was I have to check the IBUs and the alcohol between Bengali Tiger and resin, because it has to fall somewhere right between these two. And sure enough, it falls between the two. And I'm kind of thinking the same thing that, you know, Norm and other people have said, that this is really something I would drink year-round as opposed to calling it a winter warmer. It's I don't know, it's very similar. I don't know if anybody else has had it, but Half Acre's Daisy Cutter, or their Double Daisy Cutter. It's one of my favorite all-time beers, and this is pretty close to being very similar to that, so I think it's delicious.
All right, so now I'm going to, because I think everyone has been so profuse with their compliments, now the people who are going to be the most critical about the beer, I think, are going to be me and Jan. So just so you know, behind the scenes, even when good beers are released, and what I mean by that is like beers that generate positive reviews by the general beer community, behind the scenes, Jan and I are agonizing over how we could have made it better. There's never a beer that we're completely satisfied with. So this beer that we're all drinking right now, the benefit of this is we're all drinking from the same batch, because we just brewed these in a row, successive batches, and then we canned the beer all at the same time. And we only did it once. And what I mean is like one cycle. You know, there may have been multiple batches, but it was just one cycle of production. And, you know, if we were to go back and do it all over again, we would probably do a couple things a little bit differently. That being said, I'm really happy with the with the way that it turned out. But Jan, are you brave enough to mention or suggest what some of the things that maybe if this comes around again next year, what would some of the things that we may do to enhance this beer even further?
Well, I would definitely do a few test batches to see how we can like keep the same amount of BUs while still I'm making it even more smooth. Because I'm all about the balance, the smoothness of a beer, and the sneakiness. That's what I like about the resin so much, that it's like 9% alcohol, but it doesn't taste like 9%. It really sneaks up on you, and the next thing you know, you have problems like standing upright. And I would also probably thrive to bring in the balance between the earthy, herbal, and the citrusy, maybe even gearing a little bit towards the citrus fruit aromas, and making it even more brighter, more intense, like that you literally you open the can and you have to hold it away like 2 feet because the aroma is so so crazy intense that you can't. Yeah, you can deal with it. It's just too much in a funny way. So those little things I'd like to try to tweak here and there even more. But in general, I'm very happy with how it turned out. And hey, that's it.
I would like to comment too about what I would do. I largely echo what Jan says. You know, it's not like we're sitting here suffering because we think we failed, but every time you take a sip, you're like, oh man, if we only did this, or if we only tweaked it like that, you know, we could reach this pinnacle of achievement with brewing. But that's good. I think that when you lose that fire, or when you lose that determination, is the day when you should retire. You know, that's when you no longer want to improve on things. Then what's the point of doing it? Then you're just like pulling levers and pushing buttons, in my opinion. But for me,
that's so New York of you to say that.
Yeah. Well, I just feel like there's a certain quality that I really want to go for it in next year, because we're going to do this again for sure. I really like the way this kind of fit into our portfolio and stuff. But I want it to be like what Jan said, but the word I would use is called creeper. I want it to be a creeper, and that's like a beer that it's just like it's seductive in terms of its flavor, but it sneaks up on you in terms of it hides its potency, and it hides its and I'm not just talking about age. Whoa. I'm not just talking about don't mind Aaron, he's cutting down some trees in the back. No, but it's gotta like it seduces you in terms of the malt and the aroma. But there's that thin line of where, like, when you get really bludgeoned by flavor and potency sensation with that, but without getting killed by it. You know what I mean? Like, metaphorically, last night I was in Orlando, Florida, actually, and we went out to a couple bars, and I was there for a wholesaler meeting. But I walked into this bar, and it was unbelievable. There was this hardcore punk band playing, and they were all dressed in silver leotards, okay, these dudes. and they were like, they looked like the Tron suits from the movie Tron, but they had like the face cut out, and on the background they had a Clockwork Orange playing in a continuous loop, and it was just all power chords, just straight hardcore, and everyone, there was about 100 people in this room moshing and getting really, really intense. But once I got in there, I was hanging out and I was drinking beer, and I got into the rhythm of the place and the sway of the place, and it didn't really seem like all of that really aggressive sound and everything was overwhelming. It was pretty pleasant. So that's hard to achieve too with these types of beers, because I think there's so many people that when they picked up this beer, they were thinking, I'm going to get a nice syrupy, spicy, clovey gingerbread cake, right? And then they kind of got some hardcore hop thrashing. But the real art to that is like, how do you, like, that's why I almost feel like the IBUs don't matter. It's the quality of the IBUs. You know, someone said like, oh, it's 70 IBUs and this one's 80 or that one's 40, but it's really the selection of the strain and when you put it into the kettle and how you put it into the kettle. Or even if you put it in the kettle at all, you might put it in the fermenter or the conditioning tank or the flotation tank or wherever, whichever vessel you want to put it in. So definitely we're thinking about taking it up next year too. So one of the as long as we're on this, we're going to be winding it down because we have some limitations on time. We're coming up and just we only have about 5 more minutes or so before this thing is gonna blow up like in Mission Impossible, where we run out of time and your computer's gonna melt down. No, but as long as we're just on the topic, like, what are your let's just go run this through. Like, what are your favorite winter seasonal beers? And I might as well I'll start off just by saying that one of my favorite winter ones every year is just the Anchor Brewing Company does a different beer each year, and I always felt that I admired their creativity and how they kind of reinvent themselves every year with the beer. And quite honestly, some years it's really good, and some years it's forgettable, but at least they keep it interesting. So, what about you, Adam? What are you digging in the wintertime?
Likewise, the Anchor for those same reasons, and also again Sierra Nevada Celebration, just because it proves that a winter warmer doesn't have to be all sugar and spice.
Nice.
So, yeah, if we're gonna call this like an Imperial Red, congrats on making an Imperial Red or just a red beer that doesn't suck.
There you go.
I hope we'll have to see it next year, keeping with the theme of global warming.
What about you, Ashley?
That's really hard. I make a beer, and it is gingerbread, but it's a dry porter with spices. And I guess working for a brewery, when you have a lot of pride in your own beer, I talked to Adam Avery like 3 years ago for an interview, and he said, if your beer is not your favorite beer, then you're doing something wrong. And so you kind of have to favor your own. So I like my gingerbread beer, but Anchor is local for me, and I get to go to the Christmas party every year. So that's like a really special, nostalgic kind of thing that brings together the local community. I don't know. I actually, when I started thinking about winter beers, I like Bigfoot because that's Sierra Nevada's seasonal. That follows Celebration. So once we get out of that Christmas time, I still think about like the bigger beers. I drink out of season too, so I tend to always focus on food first. It depends what I'm eating, but I do like whipping out imperial stouts and bourbon barrel-aged beers when the weather starts getting a little cold.
Nice. Chris, here comes the Mad Elf, right?
I was just about to say, Trogs is 7 miles up the road, so for me it's straight up Mad Elf, big 11%. It's basically a quad with cherries and honey, and yeah, it's it'll get it gets it done in the winter. Let me tell you.
How about you, Jan?
Well, it's hard to pick out a specific one. I like to age my beers for quite a while, so in my cellar there are a lot of what I call gems. that I like to dig out in the winter. A couple of them were mentioned already. Trogs, Mad Elf, well aged. Bigfoot ages really well. I of course try every year the Anchor, the Christmas, to see what's up with them this year. But also semi-class, like aged semi-class, 5-6 years old. That is definitely a great beer for the wintertime. And as Ashley said already, yeah, love your own beer as well. So I think, of course, everything that Sixpoint does in the winter as well is heavily appreciated by myself.
What about you, Jim? What do you got tossing around in your cellar?
I hate to be the anti-American guy, but when this season rolls around, I really get excited about the Belgian Christmas beers, St. Bernardus and Guten Carolus and Korsendank and all those really malty, figgy, sugary, plum-like, big, dark beers with maybe a hint of spice they wouldn't normally have year-round. That stuff gets me excited in the wintertime, personally.
Right on. All right, Katya, you're probably on the beach at this time. With,
Actually, not. It's a pity. I wish I would. I wish I was, but I'm not. I'm in São Paulo, so no beach. But yeah, thinking about winter, which is 6 months ahead for me, I really like it's a local strong Scotch ale called Bodgy Brown. It would be wee heavy, and it's really malty, and it has a little bit of smokiness in it too. It's very good. And also the Belgian ones. I really like the Chimay Grand Preserve, which is also a strong dark ale. I like them very much in winter.
Right on. I just got alerted that we have exactly 2 minutes left, so we're gonna make sure we hear from Norm first, and then Steph.
All right. Mine is from a local brewery, Berkshire Brewing Company. It's called Holidale. It's a different recipe every year. The only thing that's similar is it's a barley wine that's over 10% alcohol every year. Usually fantastic. A couple of years has been misses, just like any brewery that changes the recipe every year, but for the most part, they've been fantastic beers.
Right on. Steph, what are you having?
You know, I have to go local, and there's 2 beers in Chicago. There's, of course, the Goose Island Coffee Bourbon Barrel Aged Stout, which is just phenomenal. And I've got a 2011 that I just put in my fridge today that I'm getting ready to drink sometime soon. And then also Revolution Brewing has a bourbon barrel aged milk stout called Mad Cow. That is also a 2011 that I have put in my fridge that I am really looking forward to trying.
Very nice. Awesome. Well, it's really great that we were able to participate in this together, and I'm actually shocked that it came together this seamlessly. Not that I doubt my or my team's abilities, and your abilities, but I was just anticipating some type of disaster happening, but it other than one person not being able to log on or who wasn't able to join us, it's gone really well. So I want to thank everyone for their time and their input here, and it's been, whoa, there you go. Nice one, Jim. And we'll do it again. You know, we have a lot of stuff in the pipeline, and I really enjoyed this. And I tell you what, as you know, we're not going to be on a Google Hangout anytime soon after this, but let's stay in touch through Instagram, stay in touch through email, stay in touch through Untapped or whatever it is, and look for us. If you see us out at the beer festivals, look for us. And everyone have a good night, okay?
You too.
Cheers.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night,
Good night.
day, afternoon.
Bye.
Afternoon.
Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.